Now we've looked a little bit at pivot tables, but there's a lot more that I'd like to show you.
Okay.
So first of all, let's just test your memory and see what you can do with a pivot table.
Uh-oh,
Can you
test.
Yeah, can you do one?
I can try.
Alrighty.
But since I had such a great instructor, let me
course.
see what I can do. All right, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that my cursor is in my data.
That's right.
And that my data is in a list format. And then I think I'm going to go to the Insert tab and the Tables group, and then Pivot Table. And I have two options. I've got a Pivot Table and Chart. You're going to teach me about charts later.
Right.
But we're going to go to Pivot Table. It's going to guess at the range, and that looks pretty correct there. It goes down to row 200. I'm going to make sure that it's in a new worksheet, and then choose OK.
Right.
So now we are in a different sheet, and I've got this field list. So I think what we had is ship to and ship from in the row labels, and then was it date in the column labels? And then what were we adding up? Was it quantity?
It was quantity. You know what? Let's do totals.
Okay.
Let's do a monetary one this time.
There we go.
Okay.
So how'd I do?
You did great.
Did I
High
pass?
five, girl.
Right,
You
good
got it.
deal.
Okay. So let's look at this and see what else we can do.
All right.
You might remember yesterday when we were looking at this that the dates kind of just run. You can scroll and scroll and scroll, and it's the information's not compact.
Yeah, it's really big.
One of the things that makes pivot tables so valuable is a lot of times we can compact our information. So when we have a field like this, where it's a date field or something where there's a lot of different items within the fields, we can group them.
Okay.
For example, with dates, we might group by weeks or months. And let's just group by months.
Okay.
So take your mouse and let's highlight from B4 to, I think it's M4 is the last December date.
Right there.
Right. Now,
Okay.
of course, we have our contextual tab up on our ribbon for pivot tables. And on that contextual tab, we have the options tab.
Okay.
And in the group
Group.
we have group selection.
Okay.
So that's going to group them together. So go on and select that. Now you'll notice what happened there is we got another row called group 1.
All right.
So if you click on that cell that says group 1 and then just type, these are all December, right?
Right.
Type December. All right, and just tab off of there. And you'll notice just to the left of where it says December, you have a minus sign. Do you remember when we've seen minus signs before, what they mean?
Yes, yesterday we actually talked about these guys over here where it can collapse and expand if it's a plus.
So click that minus sign. Now all of December is just compiled.
Okay.
And then we could come down there on row 5 and highlight all of the January ones and do the same thing. And let's do that for January, and then I think we have some February dates in here too.
Okay.
And she's using her highlighting skills.
There we go.
Click and shift click to highlight a range.
Good. That's it. And then I'll group those. We want to call that. And then collapse that to make it so I can see that. And then the last one here is February. And let's group that. Okay, good.
Now you'll see nice and compact data, and this is where really pivot tables are very useful because we can take information, compile it, and analyze and look at it very closely.
Okay, that's good. I like that.
Okay, so let's look at a few other things we can do because this looks pretty nice, but there's a lot more we can do with it.
All right.
For example, our totals represent money in this spreadsheet.
All right.
Okay, so let's go back over to the field list over on the right of your screen, and you'll notice where it says under values, sum of total.
Yes.
Let's click on that drop down next to that. First of all, I could remove the field. Now we know we can go up and just click the check box above to do that, but it's in here. I can change it to the row or the column, which we know we can just drag and drop it in the field list for that.
Right.
But I also have value field settings. This is where I can do some formatting options.
Okay.
So let's go in there. Also, I have formula options here. Notice right now it says that it is a sum. Let's say that instead I wanted an average. I could change that to average, and instead of totals within my pivot table, I would have averages.
Okay.
So that's one of the things I can do. We'll just go back to sum. And down in the bottom of this value field settings dialog box, we have a button that says number format. So let's click on that, and let's make it currency.
All right.
And you know what? I don't think we need any decimal places, so we'll just remove the decimal places. We can click OK. And click OK.
Ooh,
And
that
now
looks a lot better.
now we're starting to see kind of what we're dealing with here.
All right.
We can do the same things in our row labels and our column labels. For example, if you go over to your Ship To and click on the drop down, you'll notice some of the same things, and we have the field settings option there. And in this case, this is one of the fields we're doing subtotals on.
Okay.
And notice it says it's automatic. So the automatic is it does a subtotal.
So this number at the top is a subtotal of what's underneath it.
Exactly.
Okay.
If you click on the custom radio button, you can change that just like we could with the others. So we could go to counts or averages or things along those lines too.
Okay.
And then you can click OK there and come back out.
Do I want to change this?
Yeah, you can go back to automatic. So we can make adjustments to our row labels, our column labels, and so forth. The other thing I want you to see, we've seen those subtotals. You notice there it is. We have Atlanta and the subtotals at the top of the list, and then all the items that feed into it, right?
Sure.
You can adjust how subtotals appear,
Okay.
and that is up in our contextual tabs. So we'll go back up, and we're on the Options tab. We want to go over to the Design one under PivotTable Tools.
Okay.
Okay. Now this is where you can apply, for example, styles like we talked about when we were looking at data tables before. I can choose whether my row headers or column headers show up. I can put in banded columns and rows, all those kinds of things.
Okay. Just like the other tables
right,
we talked
just
about.
like all the others. Over to the left, all the way in the layout area, I have subtotals. And if you click on that, one, I could say, just don't show me the subtotals. So we'll turn that off. And now you just have the data compiled, but you don't have subtotals.
Okay.
All right?
That's not very useful.
I don't find it very useful, but I have found people who like that because for some reason they don't want to share the subtotals with somebody.
Okay. That makes
So
sense.
let's click on the drop down again, and notice it says show all subtotals at bottom of group. Now they were at the top of the group.
Right.
So let's see what happens if you put them at the bottom.
Oh.
So what do you notice happens here?
Well, now we have another title, Atlanta Totals, and then we've got our subtotals down.
Right. So you have the row header, Atlanta, and then you have the subtotal also.
Okay.
So that may or may not be what you want to do. Of course, we can go back to subtotals
And put it up at the top.
and put it back at the top.
I like
All
it.
right. One other thing that is really very useful with the pivot tables is something called slicers. Now, for people who've used pivot tables in the past, they probably saw this as pages in the past. It's a way to apply a filter overall.
Okay.
And if you look in your pivot table field list box over to the far right, report filter, what I'm going to show you would be like putting a field up here.
Okay.
Okay, so for example, let's just do that briefly. Why don't you drag ship from up into that report filter?
Right there.
Okay, notice what happens. Row 1, we're seeing all of the ship from locations. And then we could click on the drop down and we could choose individually which ones we want. And if we want to see more than one, we check that checkbox, turn off the all. And let's say you wanted to see Charlotte and Atlanta. Maybe we were looking at the southern ones or something.
Okay.
And we click OK. And now all we see are Charlotte and Atlanta's data. Now we don't know it's Charlotte and Atlanta's,
Okay.
but we do have the little filter button there to
That's
tell
one
us.
at the top.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so let's bring everything back.
There we go.
And put the ship from back into the row label. Let's take it back down because what they figured out, you saw we chose Charlotte and Atlanta and we couldn't see really who we had.
Right.
So we're going to put in something called a slicer, which effectively does the same thing, but I can have multiple slicers so I can filter on different areas at the same time, and I can have the slicer on screen and see what I'm working with.
Oh, that'd be good.
So let's go back up to our PivotTable Tools tab and the Options tab, And you'll notice right in the middle there's something called Insert Slicer. It's in the Sort and Filter area. So we're going to insert the slicer. And it says, okay, what slicers do you want? Let's do the ship from.
All right, let's do. There we go. Okay. Oh,
Now you have this.
box.
Yeah, we have a little box that pops up, and I can select what I want. So, for example, just click on Atlanta.
Oh.
And it's showing me over here that I have Atlanta, and it's showing me in my pivot table. Let's say we wanted Charlotte too. What do you think you would do to add Charlotte to this?
Just click on it.
All right, did that give you both?
No, it didn't.
So think about when we're selecting cells that are not next to each other. What do we do?
Control.
That's right. So I'll control. There we go. And see, now we see Atlanta and Charlotte. And as opposed to the filter that we saw in the field table list, we can literally see what we're filtering on here.
And this is like the other objects that we've talked about, that you can make this larger or smaller.
Yeah, you can.
That's awesome. That's
can.
really cool.
Now, how do you suppose you get everything back?
Oh, well, I don't see a stop it button.
Stop it!
So, I don't know. Maybe this guy right here, I see an X.
Right. It's a clear filter button, so we'll click that. And everybody comes back.
And then everything comes back. That is great. That's a very visual way
Right.
to look at combinations or just individual items there.
Exactly. And you could have more than one slicer. Now, I just want to point out briefly for you, your slicer's selected, and notice you do have a tab for the slicer now.
Oh, yeah.
And you can actually design, put colors on your slicer and so forth. You can affect its height and weight and so a lot of different things up here.
Okay.
But primarily, you're probably going to be just using it to select.
Okay.
So let's click back in the pivot table.
All right.
Notice my slicer's still available. I still see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I could add another slicer. Now, do you remember where we got the slicer?
Let's see. We got it on the PivotTable Tools tab, and then I think it was Options.
Okay.
Ooh, it's right there.
Right
Insert
there.
Slicer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just do this again.
Right. And you can choose a different category.
All right. Let's do Ship 2 this time.
Okay.
Maybe I want to cross-reference some of these.
Right. So now I have two slicers. And I can use information from one and information from the other.
Okay. So if I want to know all of the items that have a ship to of Atlanta and a ship from of Dayton,
They're
then it will
there.
show me that information. That is so cool.
Isn't
I love
it?
that. Yes.
It's a very powerful tool. And pivot tables have always been powerful. And they're just getting better and better every year.
That's awesome. I like that feature.
One quick reminder, just because we talked about it in the other module, but it's so important people know this. Click back in your pivot table
Okay.
and go to your Options tab under Pivot Table Tools.
Okay.
The refresh button.
Ah.
Do you remember what that was about?
Yes, if we make changes to our data, it's not necessarily going to pick it up automatically, that we have to tell it to go get it.
Right. The data that we pulled this from was the promotion sales worksheet. You can click over there a moment. It pulls that data at the point when we create the pivot table, and it creates a cache file of it.
Okay.
So the pivot table is what we would call a static creation.
Mm-hmm.
When we're playing around with it, it doesn't go back and look at the database. So if I have added information to the database, or if I have changed information in the database, I have to make sure to hit that refresh so
Okay.
that it goes back and pulls the most current data so that my numbers match up.
Yeah, that would be important for us, because we tend to add information
Right.
as we go forward in our sales.
So you always want to do that.
Okay. That sounds good.
That's pivot tables in a nutshell.